I'm sure you've seen the video. What were your takeaways from it?
This one's tricky. I mean, I think the very first time that I saw the video, and I think I watched most of the video. I know it was a bit choppy in pieces. I know there's more that's come out since then. And when I first saw the video, it as much as it's disheartening, it didn't raise the same level of sensitivity as it did for me with George Floyd.
You're there for sure,
right?
Yeah,
it certainly did not. And to be honest with you, I'm still, I don't want to say I'm struggling with it, but I'm still in that kind of unknown with how I feel. But I definitely know that there's a lot of learnings that can come from it. And the thing I hate the most is that someone has to die for us to have learnings. And I think that's the troubling part of all of this.
Oh, for sure.
But I'll tell you, I think when you look at the fact that for 40 minutes or so, he was compliant, he was having a conversation, everything seemed to be relatively cordial. I mean, I know the police officers were trying to do their job, but, Rashard wasn't aggressive. He wasn't fighting with them. You look at when things turn sideways, which is obviously when they go to put their hands on him and effect the arrest, and he decides to fight. And I was watching a video earlier, I think it's Vaughn Jones, I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name, who mentioned something, and I think...
Oh, Van Jones.
Van Jones, sorry.
Yeah.
And he was saying that, I guess Rashard is on probation or was on probation.
Yes.
And psychologically, what the arrest means, it's not so much that I want to fight the cops, it's more of I don't want to go back to jail kind of a thing, right? I know I'm shortchanging the whole conversation that Van Jones was making. But it's that side, and I can understand, and I'm starting to learn to understand the mentality of someone who's going back or has the potential to go back to prison. And it's not so much that he's fighting police; he's really fighting the desire not to be back in an institution for something that seemed to have started from a really minor. Yeah, and I'm not trying to raise levels of crime. So this is where I struggle, is because. Is it justified, the shooting? I can see where the police officer's coming from.
Yeah.
But I think that the hard part is the shooting from behind the back, I think, is where it really,
right.
It comes back to training. Could they have done things differently? There's a bunch of things they could have done differently. I'm really struggling with this one, to be honest with you. Again, I don't think he should have died. I don't think he should have been shot like that. But it's different. It's not the same level as George Floyd.
Yeah, I have to agree. When I first watched it, I did feel some outrage the first time, because I thought, the guy's running away. Do you really need to shoot him? It's a DWI. You've got the car. He's not really a danger to other people at this point. Maybe try to pick him up later on. So my immediate response was, this was not a justified shooting. They terminated the officer. And I was really shocked by the charges they brought. Pretty heavy charges.
And really quick, too.
Life sentence or death penalty, which have now taken death penalty off the table. And then I did what I always do. I talked to another officer and say, what's your opinion on this shooting?
Right.
And he immediately said, that shooting is justified.
Yeah.
That officer should not even lose his job. Right. I was like, why? What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? Mm-hmm. He's like, there's a lot of things there. For one, he's driving a rental car. His driver's license is out of town. They can't go just pick him up. Mm-hmm. But more important than that, he was saying, a taser is not a deadly weapon. Agree. However, if he tases the cop, he can now take his weapon, which changes everything. Right. So he was saying if he was in that exact same situation, he would have used his firearm, because he was not going to allow himself to be tased and then suffer the consequences that come after with being tased. Right.
And, I think to that point, he doesn't want the potential of this suspect to get his weapon. Stop and think for a second.
Yeah.
He already has one of their weapons.
Yes.
So it puts it into a different context. It's, if there was a quick resistance and I'm fleeing and I'm running and I get 3 shots in the back, completely, in my opinion, unjustified. We're not even having this conversation. But, he's wrestled with the police officers. He's acquired one of their weapons.
Yes.
Yes, it's a non-lethal weapon. But it although it's a non-lethal option, it can be lethal. I think that needs to be said.
Yeah.
But he actually has already proven that he has the ability to get their weapon and run off with it.
Yes.
And now if I'm able to tase you, if I come back now and I get your firearm, it's another conversation. So I think when you start to really look at those things in perspective, I can understand why a police officer might feel he needs to deploy his weapon. He's already got a weapon being used against him.
Yeah.
I think that if it was me in that situation, I think I might deploy my weapon as well.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that I think is important is that when police officers shoot, put yourself in their mind for a second. Are they shooting to kill or are they shooting to stop? And this is the question. You can't shoot when a guy is running. You're not aiming to shoot his calf.
Right.
You're not shooting to hit his bicep. You're trained to shoot body mass.
Absolutely.
And, I think it's hard to suggest that the police officer shot with the intent to kill him. And that's the unknown.
Yeah.
He wants to incapacitate him.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean he wants to kill him. The unfortunate part is, from what I've heard, is that one of the bullets pierced his heart. It's part of the mass area. The chances are, yes, it may hit the heart. But I think that's the struggle is like, did he intend to kill him? And I don't know if we could really answer that at this point.
Yeah. My mind's been changed after talking to that officer. I look at it now and I realize that, I would also deploy my weapon in that scenario. And yes, he died and that's unfortunate, but I don't think this officer should be facing charges. I'm not even sure he should be fired. I think a suspension would have been sufficient. And now we've got a much bigger problem. We've got a mayor in Atlanta and a district attorney in Atlanta who are people of color. And I think politics is entering into this a little bit here. Mm-hmm. The charges are so strong, so aggressive. When you compare it to the charges in Minnesota, where we watched someone murder somebody in cold blood, and the charges didn't reach this level. This district attorney is going to end up looking terrible here. I think he's overreached in trying to make an impression that they're going to be tough on racism and tough on police brutality. I think they've lost their way here and got too heavy-handed. And they could set back this great movement that we have with that approach, right?
My thought as well is this, and I want to make sure I'm absolutely clear. I am not suggesting that anybody deserves to die at the hands of police. No. What I think we need to be absolutely careful of, though, is that we now don't make it the minute that somebody that's black does something, quote unquote, wrong.
Yeah.
And it's a white police officer who happens to be on the opposite side of that.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden now everyone's getting fired. Yeah. People are resigning. Yeah. Because we can go the opposite way where it becomes anarchy. We can just do whatever the heck we want to do. That's what I think we need to be careful of.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When there is injustice done, we have to fight. We have to make our voices heard. We can't necessarily paint the same brush with every crime that happens now moving forward, because then it waters down the meaning of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Again, yes, could this situation have been handled differently as a Monday morning quarterback in hindsight? Absolutely. Yeah. It could be done differently. But in that moment, and when you look at what you see a relatively calm person for 40 some odd minutes, and then it goes sideways very, very quickly.
Yeah.
He gets the weapon. He runs off with it. He points it at the police officer.
And that's the moment. You have to do something.
Yes, it's unfortunate what happened. But when you look at those compiling circumstances, is it unreasonable to think that a police officer would deploy their weapon? I don't think it's unreasonable. That's just my take on it. And I don't want to see that now we just make everything be about race.
Yep.
And now, everyone's getting fired the minute they do something wrong, because now you could also end up where there are police officers who don't take action when they should take action.
Yeah.
And then now we're crying bloody murder when someone, I don't want to get into a lot of the Toronto politics with policing and stuff like that. But if now all of a sudden I'm a black individual, I'm doing something wrong, a white police officer comes up and is like, you know what, I don't want to touch that because if I make an action,
we don't want that.
I don't want that. So now the action that I'm doing now causes the death of somebody else.
Yeah.
Now people are going to say, well, the police officer didn't respond.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful that there's a right balance between, acting appropriately when a police officer acts inappropriately, and the opposite side, which is just now it being an issue anytime someone does something wrong. It's about race. And I think, politics is starting to become a part of that, where it's, I looked at this situation and from what I can tell, from my angle, looks like an apparent proper response from the police, to now where people, they got charged the next day, it seemed like.
Yeah.
It's where is the opportunity to say, okay, you know what? Suspension pending and further investigation. Let's look at the facts. Let's figure it out. And then we'll take the appropriate action. This is a different story than George Floyd as far as I'm concerned.